I have a series of little motions here that deal with the rent stabilization and tenant protection as discussed at this meeting, and as part of response to what the committee gave us. I would ask that the staff is directed to come back to council for action soonest on. There shall be an ordinance code that all initial renters must be given the opportunity for a one-year lease by the landlord. At the expiration of the one-year lease, unless notice is received otherwise, the lease shall be extended by one-year increments. This to apply for all rental units that are greater than 28 in single management or owner as they exist of November 29th, 2016. Again, this is, staff is directed to come back to council, and if you really wanted to go back to the Housing and Economic Development, I'll yield on that point, but at least this gets the idea of best practices from certain organizations who actually advocate for one-year lease.
Okay.
Pass that down to Dan.
There is a motion on the table. Is there a second? Seeing none, the motion... I'm sorry.
You'll have, I think my battery is running low on my hearing aid. Would you repeat the motion?
I gave you a copy.
Oh, wait a minute.
I gave you a hard copy because anticipation. The staff is directed to come back to the council for action soonest on. There shall be an ordinance code that all initial renters must be given the opportunity for a one-year lease by the landlord. At the expiration of the one-year lease, unless notice is received otherwise, the lease shall be extended by one-year increments. This to apply for all rental units that are greater than 28 in a single management as they exist of November 29th. Again, this is for council, this is for staff to come back to council. If
I can't follow what you're going awfully fast
Yeah.
there, so... Okay.
and give that to Grayson.
Yeah, thank you.
You guys can have this.
Madam Mayor, if I may make a
Yes, you
comment.
may,
You did
Councilmember Birsan.
a good job of putting my comments into context about not legislating from the dais, not creating legislation. This is kind of two-sided here, that you're giving council or you're giving staff direction, but then turning around and telling them the direction to take, or giving them, so this gets way down in the weeds. Again, it's more than just getting support from colleagues to give staff direction. You're telling them, come up with something, and here's what I want you to come up with. And that's what I'm talking about as far as creating something from the dais. This is not how we legislate.
I disagree.
Okay, so at this point, there is a motion. Is there a second? Oh, Vice Mayor Leone.
No, I'm not seconding that. I wanted to give an explanation. One of the things that, that's right. One of the, okay, let it die then.
Okay, let me see if there's a second on the motion, then you can go with your comments. Is there a second on the motion that was on the table by Councilmember Birsan? Seeing none, that motion fails for lack of a second. Vice Mayor Leone.
I was going to clarify that one of the things that the committee will take a look at when we're looking at a mediation, landlord mediation, are recommendations that we give to the landlords that say these are the types of guidelines that we would like you to live by. So it's maybe non-binding, but they're guidelines. And then if people get complaints about those, then they could come to us. So one of the things could be on how often they increase, what the increases should be. Those are the types of things that I foresee going through the guidelines in the mediation landlord-tenant board.
Councilmember Birsan.
Actually, I do not see that within the confines of your mediation board. The mediation board was set up to dispute specific rent increases. This is a simple request that staff come back to us for action soonest on this subject. They can say, here it is, and the answer is, we don't like it. They could say, here it is, and here it is in 5 different versions. I don't see that as legislating. It goes, I'm asking staff to come back for action as soonest.
Okay, and your motion died for lack of a second.
Okay, I have round 2, if you don't mind.
Councilmember Birsan.
Okay, staff is directed to come back to council or the Housing and Economic for action soonest on the concept of all rental complexes that are managed by the same management company owner, where there is a default on a code enforcement or a housing inspection order for repair, may not raise the rents on units in that complex. This is to apply for all units, for all rental units that are greater than 28 in a single management or owner as they exist as of November 29th. We've heard about people talking about bad apples. All right, let's ask staff to write a bad apple, bad practice clause. Now, we can then discuss it, whether we want to do it or not, but let's direct staff to bring it forward to us.
Okay, there's a motion on the
Pass that
table.
one down to Dan, because I know he's a... You want one?
Is there a second on Councilmember Birsan's motion? Okay, that motion fails for lack of a second.
Okay. I have
May I ask just how many you have?
two more,
Two more, okay.
although there is no limit, is there? But they only have filibuster in the Senate. Okay, motion 3. The staff is directed to come back to council for action soonest on the wording of a possible ordinance that includes calls for just cause eviction only. I believe this was touched on by Mr. Councilmember Helix earlier, where he wanted the nuisance removed. So since that was missed by everyone, it's here again. Let's get staff to write something on just cause without the word nuisance.
Okay, so there's a motion to direct staff to prepare an ordinance on just cause eviction.
Right.
Yes, I know, I apologize.
You got one? Yeah. Is there a second?
And that motion fails for lack of a second at this point? I don't see any seconds, okay?
All right, one more time before the storm here. Staff is directed to come back to council for action soonest on something which would read, there will be a limit on one raise of rent for a 12-month period from the last rental increase and not more than 10% of the then current rate. This to apply for all rental units that are greater than 28 in a single management or ownership as they exist as of November 29th, 2016.
Do you have that in writing? Thank you. I need to get that down to my colleague here. Okay, so basically you're asking for an ordinance that would establish some sort of rent control for one increase of no more than 10% in a 12-month
Actually,
period.
it's pretty
So that
much
would be a rent control.
Actually, it's best practices, and I seem to have lifted this from the best practices of an association that deals with rent as experts.
Okay. All right, there's a motion by Councilmember...
And I should note that there is a practitioner here who testified about this best practice.
Okay. So there's a motion by Councilmember Birsan to direct staff to prepare an ordinance, bring it back through the process that would allow only one rent increase in a 12-month period of no more than 10%, applying to 28 or more, or greater than 28 units in a project. Is there a second? There is no second. That motion fails for a lack of a second.